I grew up here in Washington, D.C. I was born here in Washington, D.C. This is my hometown. This is a neighborhood that I grew up in. And I'm basically active in the revitalization process of the 8th Street Northeast Business Quarter.
I worked for Nurney Mason at Mason's barbershop for about a year and a half, from 64 to 65.
My name is Nurney Mason. I'm a master barber and the owner of Mason's Barbershop.
I am your past, your now, and your tomorrow. I am the conch, high English, Washington Square, bush, high top fade, press and curl, and yes, the jerry curl. I am segregation, integration, white flight, urban blight, urban renewal, and gentrification. I am 8th Street Northeast African American barbers and beauticians, and yes, I am still standing.
Mason, how old were you when you became a barber?
I was 13 when I first started cutting hair. Well, I was licensed in D.C. in 1954. I decided to become a barber because I have 7 brothers and all of them was barbers. I'm from a family of barbers. They talked me into it. I didn't want to be a barber. My brother almost forced me because I told him barbering was for old people. It wasn't for no young man.
How did you decide to open your shop here? Was it a hard process or?
No, the barbershops on 8th Street at the time was 8th Street and 7th Street Northwest where all the black barbers were. So I found a man going out of business and I took over. I opened a barbershop on 8th Street Northeast, March 1961. Back in the 60s when I first came here, it was black barbershops, say from 4th Street to 14th Street. But then white started maybe around 6 or 7. There was still some whites down there that they didn't want to see us down there. But it worked itself out because we didn't want to be down there.
Black men had a certain walk on 8th Street. All of them. Every last one of them had their own little bop step that they did. If you didn't have it, you didn't belong. And right to the day, sometimes I break out my little 8th Street strut. and when I do it, I think about the guys that I work with and the clients that used to come to the barbershop, and this is how they did, and this is what they did, and that's basically my still mental connection with 8th Street, the black men that they were very polite and they had that step, that swag.
Back then, I could make $100 on Saturdays, which was big money. 63 on up to 68 until it arrived. We had to do most of our work on Fridays and Saturdays, and it was so good then we could never get out of here. Ours was from 9 to 7, but we could never get out of here till like 10, 11 o'clock at night, because we had to make it all in a couple of days, and that's how good business was.
Prior to the riots, I think the 8th Street business was probably at its fullest bloom. All business then, in particular hair, because there was a hair salon, a shop on just about every block. Actually, I remember, and you could do this back in the 60s, stand out in the street. And when people walk past your door, you ask them, you want a haircut? Because there were so many shops that if they left your block and went into another block, there was someone out in front of that shop soliciting for their customers right on the street.
Well, before the riots, I mean, 8th Street was owned by, the businesses were owned by Greeks, by Irishmen, by Jews, Italians, basically owned 8th Street. and African Americans worked for them. But yet, it was a mecca for African Americans to come. So did we receive benefit? Yes. Through employment? Yes. But through ownership? No. The ownership came after the riots, when everybody took flight. So that was the difference, and then during the same time, you had African Americans to purchase their buildings. So a lot of African Americans purchased the buildings because people thought in their lifetime the H Street would never come back. So let me purchase, if you want to buy the building, you can buy the building, I'm out of here. So that's what took place.
I was there. And yes, I inhaled smoke and devastation even though my business and my building were spared. I was there during the 1968 riots on 8th Street Northeast, and I too felt the pain of dear Martin being taken from us and the violent interruption of his peaceful American dream to make us 5/5 complete. I was there. N-word branded. Picket signs, sit-ins, power to the people, colored, Negro, black, say it loud. Yes, I'm black and I'm proud. I was there on 8th Street Northeast during the 1968 riots. I was more than a mere business. I was a community. I was a soul brother. And thankfully, my building and my business were spared.
How did H Street look back in its, after the riots, the devastation? Could you explain that?
Like a war zone. Actually, like a war zone. You literally had buildings or facades, or front of buildings that were standing all alone because the rear of the buildings, the inside of the buildings were torn up and burnt down. And you had bricks standing up by itself that was held up by beams. And, it was tough. I mean, it was something totally different. I think the 800 block where K Jewelers was and a couple of men's stores was the hardest hit. Then where you had Morton's, that was terribly hit. And then you had where Slate Furniture was in the 1200 block of A Street was terribly hit. So these buildings, then you had some infills that were hit, where they had to tear the buildings down. The 500 block of A Street was hit also. So those are the buildings that were, or projects that were hit the hardest.
And there wasn't that many places to work because most of them was burnt down. It took years to recover. I was on 8th Street during the riot, and the most comical thing ever happened to me that I remember since I was here. I had an Italian lady have a mom and pop store right next door. And as people was burning and stores burning, all the white stores up here, so her and I was good friends, so she run over here, Nurney, what can I do? She put a sign in your window, Soul Sister. and she put a sign in the window, Soul Sister, and they didn't touch her place. Then after going through the riot, the business fell all the way off from, I had 5 barbers to 2, me and one more.
And Black Power movement moved in after the riots. And what that did, it shut down barbershops and beauty shops because the barbers and beauticians did not keep up with the trend. The trend was going to natural hair. The big afro, the bigger the afro, the more revolutionary and more, we felt good about ourselves and stuff because the natural hair, the black experience, the afro made us really beautiful. We moved from that being a colored generation to being a black and proud generation of people.
James Brown, I'm still mad with him. When he came up with the record right after the riot, well, I was still doing pretty good. But he's come up with this song, I'm Black and I'm Proud. Oh boy. And that's when the guys really thought what they had, they was glad of their hair, they say, Black and I'm Proud. So they stopped getting a haircut altogether then.
But the sad thing about that is that the beauticians and barbers, they suffered because the chemical element was pushed to the back. the coloring was all pushed back. So there you didn't have that type of arrangement of the hair. And they didn't know how to do it. And I worked with some guys that actually knew exactly what to do to make a bush. Like I like to call it a bush. Some people call it afro. I don't know what that is. I remember comments about, can I wear this to work? What my mom's gonna say? You know, can you make this straight hair bush? My hair don't bush. Come on. I many days I would say I can make anything bush. If it's hair, I'm in control of that. You got straight hair, I can make it bush. You got perm hair, I can make it bush. You got bush hair, you know I can make that bush because that's gonna bush. If you came in the shop and the hair was just tight to the head, we would make that thing just swell up like a chia pet. You know the commercial? We would blow it out, and man, we guys and gals, they were feeling so good because their hair was saying, I'm black and I'm proud. And for me, the bush or the afro was probably the most powerful hairstyle ever created. It defined a generation of people and a movement. And not only it helped black people, but it helped other minorities and other ethnic groups who had curly hair. That they are pressing out the waves and curls and making it silky straight was gone, and you could embrace your natural beauty.
I pained at knowing what was and what actually is. I pained at the remnants of 8th Street that once welcomed our dollars when others would not. I pained for the 8th Street of its heyday where African Americans were allowed to proudly shop, feast, and be entertained. I longed for the days of old when 8th Street was bustling and I would work my clippers from daylight to nightlife. I pained at the devastation, desolation, government isolation, vacant buildings, crack epidemic, crime, and nameless victims. I pained over non-business, break-ins, burglaries, no barbers, working 2 and 3 jobs just to feed my family and to hold on to my namesake, Mason's barbershop. I pained for the Almighty to once again intervene on 8th Street Northeast and allow us to exhale.
It was tough. It was at a time where high unemployment. It was during a time that the area was redlined. You couldn't get a loan if you wanted to buy a building. I don't care how much you was in business. If you didn't have some tricks up your sleeve, it was tough. And so you had to piecemeal everything you had together to make do. And you couldn't fix the second floors of your building because you didn't have the money to do it. So you had to do what you can on the first floor to make it work. And it was tough. Those were some very tough times. It was almost like a good example of third world situation. That's what we was dealing with down here. And did anyone really care about what African Americans were going through? They didn't care what we just let them stay in a little corner. We don't care, and we're not putting no money out there.
We couldn't get no money to build on 8th Street. Nobody wanted to let you have no money. Couldn't even get insurance, Then we had a group where we was meeting, trying to raise money to rebuild 8th Street on our own, but it didn't work out, so we had to give up on it.
Marionberry as a champion for the city during that time. And you had Skokie Carmichael, it was going through the quarter with a bullhorn. You had Malcolm X, who was coming in and out the city, during that time, preaching what he believed in, and the self-help, do for self, and all the rest. And Marion did what he could to bring back 8th Street by the 8th Street connection.
In the 70s, and we, like I say, we survived it, but they just couldn't. There wasn't nobody getting haircuts. All I saw was dark days, believe me. I didn't see no bright days. I told you the funny part, but the ride, me and lady mom, you know, during the ride. There was just one day of comical, but so far as seeing some, I just didn't see nothing bright back then. It was all dark. And I used to hate to see this time of year come, because when I said dark, it made me think, well, it started getting dark earlier. And it was very, very depressing. And I think I raised a family with 6 kids, and you started thinking about Santa Claus. Oh, I don't think I can talk about it. It's really rough. Dark days. I still had a cab. Back before I went on the hill, I owned about 5 cabs, and I would rent them out. My goal was to get a fleet, but after I got a call to come to the hill, I kind of rent them out, and I couldn't look after them up there like I could here. So the guys wouldn't do right. I had to let them go. But that was my second income then. Did what we had to do to stay in business. But having the cab business to fall back on was great help. But I never had no dream through all those dark days. I never had no dreams of having to close up. You know, I always was determined to stay in business. Actually, I've had good people by my side, like my senior barber, Otis Gamble. He stuck with me, you know, and he's been a great inspiration to the business. And young barbers come in, he train them, stay right on them.
What about the crack epidemic in the 80s? Do you know if it had any type of effect on H Street community?
Yes. Crack had a monumental impact on H Street. It made even black people frightened of their own neighborhood, because crack addicts had to do whatever they needed to do to get their fixes. So that was not a good scene for H Street.
And the crack epidemic, even some of our own kids, you know, fell victim to the crack epidemic, because you stand in businesses all day long trying to make money to take your families, to keep your business going, while you have these latchkey kids out here, and they doing things, getting involved in things they hadn't been involved with. But at the same time, that same epidemic helped so many beauty salons, because the boyfriends of the drug dealers and all the rest, they would take care of the girls. And the girls, the first thing they did, they would come and get their hair service, and they would come 2 or 3 times a week. So that boosted the industry even more. But I think the hardest thing came during the drug epidemic, where the drug dealers eventually saw that the salon was a place that it was a cash business, and they can actually purchase salons and go on business for themselves to flush cash. And that was probably the most hurtful thing of our industry, where that took place in some of the in some of the beauty salons and barbershops. But you know, we have graduated away from that now, where we can really begin again, once again, see the true professional. Because we did have that period where we had drug dealers to come in and open up businesses, which really hurt the industry for a while, and people looked at it a little bit differently.
The crack epidemic, you mean the crack that you smoke? Yeah, well, I can't describe it whether it was crack or not, but drugs was a great enemy to us. At one time, my shop was they broke into my shop at least once a week.
I'm still standing on this here H Street Northeast corridor. I've stood for decades and decades and decades and decades more, and I've experienced it all. I stood with some of the great ones like Kathy Hughes, Doris Clark, George Parker, Charles Lovejoy, Sharon French, Brother Bay, and the big man, my son, Robbie Mason, just to name a few. 51 years later, I'm still standing despite the hardships and setbacks I've endured.
And Mason Barbershop have the name of being a family shop. Right away we feel every barber that come in here right away We make him feel like a family. This young man here only been here about a year, but he is one of us. And the customers can see that when they come in here, they feel like they come into a family. We cut Caucasian, we cut Spanish people, all hair we cut, except dogs' hair. We don't bother that.
Do you have any well-known, famous, or well-known clients?
I was saying, I have well-known clients. I got them on the wall. I got them here and on the Capitol Hill.
Can you name some? I see Front Roy.
Yeah, Front Roy, Louis Stokes, Congressman Stokes. And I got the two congressmen on the end, Congressman Clay and his father. I had breakfast with President Obama. But that's what Obama was trying to do. When we were having lunch, that's one of the things we talked about. Not only him, but from all over. Every city, almost every city in the United States had some barbers or some entrepreneurs there to speak on this. They're trying to be an inspiration to the young men now to keep them out of trouble so they won't get that record.
Okay, can you name some popular men's haircut styles back from the 60s, 70s, and 80s? Do you remember any?
The 60s, we started off with what we call the Washington Square. We also call them quavadas. The hair cut short and shape it all the way around. And it's back now, we had a few coming back. It kind of goes in a circle. But the worst time we had is dreadlocks in the bush. I really suffered through the bush.
Do you remember Marcus Griffith, the founder of Hair Salons, who had a black hair manufacturing company in H Street? Can you tell us what you remember?
Yeah, Marcus was a hair care technician on H Street, and he had a product. And with his product, he formulated here, basically on H Street, and he sold it not only in the salons, but he sold it all over the world. You talking about Ghana, you talking about Jamaica, you named it, his product was shipped. And the larger companies didn't take hold of that and duplicate that until many years afterwards. So he was a trailblazer in reference to getting product out, African-American product out, and selling to people abroad. He did very well on A Street. He hired many people on A Street down at the Old Atlas Theater. And not only that, he had, I think it was Beauty World or some other salons that he had, throughout the area. So he was a catalyst.
The craziest haircut.
Well, I don't mess with them, but I see the barbers have. The craziest one I see is the what they call it, ridge. What y'all call it? The mohawk. And then they want them lines. Some of them want the lines and initial in their head. Yeah. But I don't even try to deal with them. They don't.
The government did a recent, the construction that was on H Street. Did it? What type of impact did it have on the business?
It didn't help. It was another downfall. Like the A Street streetcars, for instance, they took them a couple of years. They still haven't finished. They put them down, dig it up, go back under. And they had, what happened was, I understand they had different contractors do different things. I get one contractor for the work, put the streetcars in, and the other one to put up lights. And it wasn't well planned. And not being well planned, it held up the business. It made our business very bad, interrupted.
So during the construction, did your business receive any type of, support from the government? Do you know if H Street businesses got any type of assistance because of the construction?
No, we didn't get nothing.
Okay, so if you can repeat that.
No, the construction, we didn't get nothing. We tried, but they didn't give us nothing. I think they owe us the business people that have been here with longevity like myself, I think they owe us a bonus to keep things going. Because 8th Street and a lot of other neighborhoods, it wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for people like me that suffered it out and stayed. It was they owe us, believe me, big time.
If I think the government should support the black businesses and the businesses that was in that particular quarter, yes, I do. And because those businesses were still able to provide the type of services, goods and services that those citizens in that that particular neighborhood needed, and they struggle with all of the blight, the riots, and the shortcomings that went with it. And I think the government should be able to give them a tax incentive, and also be able to provide low interest, zero interest loan, so that they can reinvest in their businesses and make 8th Street the model street that it should be.
The remix of 8th Street, it ain't as bustling and full of life as it once was before the 1968 riots, but it's on its way. And every round gets higher and higher for us barbers and beauticians, as we church folks like to say. I'm still standing though, because for me, it is so much more than just hair.
So I watched the quarter in its heyday. I watched the quarter go through its devastational period during the riots, and I watched the quarter basically trying to rebuild itself, and I eventually got involved in the revitalization process. And here we go, we are now with 8th Street, receiving all these accolades. So I want the history to read that there was an African-American neighborhood that was hustled and bustled, and they didn't fall into total demise, that they held the strings, I would say the shoestrings together to keep the quarter going, and eventually African-Americans came back together to pull the quarter back together where it's vibrant now. So we didn't have to have a savior from the outside to come bring the quarter back. It was an African-American who did it.
Do you have an idea how barbershops and beauty salons were able to weather the storm and remain on 8th Street?
Beauty salons and barbershops on 8th Street were able to last for a long time because of it was a market. It was a market for the service. That one thing, if you need a job, you need to have your hair service. You won't go in there with your hair not cut, not groomed. A young lady need to go in there with a hair service if you're going for a job interview. If you're going to church, you want your hair looking right. You're not going to put a rag around it. We have to have every strand in place. We have this pride thing about us that we have to look good. Our hair has to be in place and so forth. And that still exists to this day. So the beauty salons and the barbershops did not suffer behind that. They were good businesses to be in. They recently did a study, CNN did a study last year before last, that when the recession hit real bad a few years ago, that the businesses that grew across this country were barbershops and beauty salons, and employ people. You had people who left jobs, consulting jobs, basically to become stylists again. And that's how they made their money, because they couldn't get any consulting work. So when it comes to economic hard times, that it's been the beauty business that have helped keep this country and neighborhoods together. So we've been able to employ people during tough times.
Reference to being Caucasian or any other, like Latino, do you have any that are come to you on a regular basis, that are regular customers?
Sure. We have quite a few white clientele. Yeah, I think every barber in here have a customer there.
Have you ever asked them why they decided to come to your shop instead of going somewhere else?
No, they most times they will tell, if they come here more than 2 times, they'll tell you someone recommend them, and they come in and say they like it because they feel a family atmosphere. They feel safe in here, But and even some of the clientele invite us out to their house for picnics and whatnot. Cookout, I shouldn't use the word picnic.
My definition of gentrification: people come to a neighborhood and take advantage of the low rents, the low economic opportunities when the neighborhood has been devastated and everyone else has lost hope. And it can be black, white, green, purple, or blue. Any neighborhood you come in, and you take advantage of those opportunities without folks really understanding and realizing what they have, and then pushing people out behind those efforts. That is my term, to a certain degree, of gentrification.
Well, my definition of gentrification is, for me, is one group coming in and replacing another group. And I remember gentrification back when I was working on H Street was in full effect then, because the few property owners used to come by Mason's barbershop, and they were taught about, well, you need to own your homes. They were basically renters. Basically, most of the H Street community, the black community, were renters, renting from whites that were renting to them. So, and now the white population is just a little bit more visible. They were always there. They were just invisible because they were renting to black tenants. So it just, it's just a butterfly coming out of the cocoon, in a sense. It's like, oh, this is our property. We're gonna show you who really owns this property over here. So, and the advice of that gentleman that came in the barbershop, people just didn't adhere to it. They were too busy moving out into Prince George's County and other outlying areas, and they could have really been in the driver's seat now had they done this back in the 60s. And it was available for them in the 60s. Gentrification was going on back in the 60s as well. Yeah, it's nothing new. It's not. I like to say that it's nothing new. Generally, when gentrification come about, there are new rules, and the new rules apply. The old rules no longer apply. Now, if we can get past that and be able to uphold some of the old rules as the new rules come in, because that's what gentrification is all about. And my position is you have to be able to hold your ground, and holding ground meaning that you're not going to let go of how we do things here. We'll accept your ideas if they is in the same agreement as ours. If what you're bringing into the neighborhood is going to enhance the neighborhood without taking away what we. I look at 8th Street and Benning Road as the same street, and a lot of people might disagree with me, but they have a golf course up there on Benning Road, Langston Golf Course, which is basically over the years was the only course that black people could play golf. This is an extension of 8th Street. It's just like Capitol Hill now has become, 8th Street has become an extension of Capitol Hill. So we have to extend 8th Street all the way down to Minnesota Avenue, at least, and to include RFK Stadium and the historic golf course. So I remember the fight with with the old Redskins owner who wanted to take that property and turn into a parking lot, put the Cook Stadium or FedEx Field over there where the golf course is and stuff. And all of that to me is 8th Street in substance. So, and see, gentrification would close the golf course and put something else there, what we embrace, the thing that we cherish. We just don't let those things go. We just can't do that.
The changing of the neighborhood is very good for my business. I tell my son Robbie that I've been through the hard time and he got the gravy.
Do you have white customers down in
8th Street is coming along. 8th Street is coming along. 8th Street, from where it was back in the day to where it is now, I think it's keeping its warmness. A lot of things that people are talking about are things we did back in the day, so it's nothing new, most of it. So it's just being recycled with a new name, which is so funny. This livable, walkable area. 8th Street always been livable. 8th Street always been walkable. 8th Street always been vibrant, and hip. But now it's with a different demographic. So it's old for us with no money. It's new for them with a lot of money. So 8th Street is becoming this hip place, and people are rediscovering what was already here. So I always say, you know, if anything, that I am probably more disheartened about, if anything else, that enough African Americans didn't buy into what we was already involved in into the revitalization process. But I feel good about 8th Street and revitalization, but we need to use our efforts, use the efforts down here as an example of what we can do for the rest of the city.
8th Street now, I'm very proud that I suffered it out and stayed here. Not only for the sake of me, but for the sake of my son, Robbie, and young barbers.
A rapidly gentrifying area. I think that beauty salons and barbershops have an opportunity to stay here for a long time. All we have to do is be open, be willing to re-educate ourselves, and open the doors for that new attraction. We have the advantage. Like I say, we own our properties, most of us. We own our properties. And we can hire people who look like us, and we can hire people who don't look like us. So we have the advantage. All we have to do is not let it slip out of our fingers.
Property or
Yeah, we own the property now, just in time too. The people have made great offers, but the business has gone up. You know.
do you see yourself ever retiring, or you think you just
I can think I cut until I can't cut no more.
It has always been more than just hair to these people of mine. The way it grows and cornrows, the way it locks, the way it shines. It has always been more than just hair to you standing back there as you wear your plainclothes uniform, using only your apron as your cape. Since back in the days, long before the 8th Street corridor had a liquor store, every other door it had the beauty shops, the barber shops, and of course the Lord's house of faith. But to date, many of your shops were home because they felt that safe, and it's greatly because of you standing back there behind that chair, because as you know it, for these people of mine, it has always been so much more than just hair. Long before we had our freedom, had a vote, even before Martin had a dream, we had a razor, had a comb, had a sense of style that was mean. Since before a little black child could even dream of being president or seeing 2 times over run a phenomenal campaign, that same little black child knew he could earn a great living being a beautician or a barber, and so he didn't complain. Because to this day, for my people, it has always been so much more than just hair. We salute you standing back there behind that chair, doing your adjuncts and your fades, your relaxers and your braids, your designs and immeasurably precise lines, your parted swirls and pressing curls. We salute you and will wait for hours sometimes just before Easter Sunday. You are not just a barber or beautician, you make magic like magicians. The way you transform how one looks and feels. So please dig in your heels and keep standing. Through weary bones and tired feet, through arthritis-stricken hands and several more clients to meet, please just stand. And even when you feel as though you no longer can, me and my people, we will have to reluctantly understand. We just ask that you please can lend your skills and expertise to the next aspiring beautician or barber that you meet, because this legacy will never end, not even at the end of you nor me, for it is something that we simply and innately share. Because for these people of mine, it will always be so much more than just hair.